Hey, what's up, boys? So today we're going to be looking at a video titled "Inside Diddy's Freak Off Parties." Let's get into the video. Yeah.
Sean Diddy Combs was once known as a rapper, music mogul, and serial entrepreneur. These days, however, he's known as an alleged sicko who allegedly used and abused people in the most disgraceful way and is now paying for his sins. P. Diddy in the last 12 months has been in the focal point for everything but his musical and business ventures, as he sits incarcerated in Brooklyn's Metropolitan Detention Center awaiting trial after he got indicted for sex trafficking charges. The truth about his freak-off parties have finally gotten exposed. Sean Diddy Combs has been a mogul in the music industry for over 30 years. He's played a part in the careers of some of the most successful names in hip-hop. While music has been what the majority of the public recognize him for, things have been a little different behind the scenes, as most of his peers know him as a strategic event planner who puts together some of the best parties in the music industry. Some of those parties were highly documented celebrity events like the all-white parties, while others were not so documented and illegal for that matter. In the late 90s, Sean Diddy Combs started hosting these all-white parties. The all-white party was an industry party hosted by Diddy himself. There were 3 different criteria for anyone who wanted to attend. Number 1, come with a good attitude, ready to have fun and let loose. Number 2, have ties to the circle of celebrities attending. And number 3, show up in white clothing. The parties were a white dress code and decor-themed event attended by all the A-list celebrities in the industry you could possibly think of. The events initially started getting
Which is weird because a lot of people are now starting to dissociate from him, obviously. But it's so funny seeing people who there's actual pictures of them being on parties. They say, okay, I've never been to a Diddy party, or if I've been there, I've left early. So it's like it's really funny.
hosted in the Hamptons before moving to other locations that Diddy picked. These parties were supposed to be a fun day/night of festivities, which it eventually was for all the high-profile celebrities who attended. And the intention behind the white dress code was a way to strip away everyone's image and put them all in the same color and on the same level as stated by Diddy himself. Diddy described these parties as breaking down racial barriers and generation barriers, as the attendees came from all walks of life, different ethnic backgrounds.
I kind of get the first part, like, of course it's Diddy, so there's a sprinkle of bullshit in some of the stuff he says, but I kind of understand the race thing, but not the generational thing, because for you to have ties to people who are in that party, you have to be a famous person. So how the fuck do you get into that party when you're broke and not all those other people are rich? Maybe I'm just looking at it the wrong way. Actually, I'm looking at the camera right now. I just noticed I'm wearing white. No relation. Leave me the fuck alone.
And racial backgrounds, but they were all still connected through the circle of elites they were rolling in. The first party took place over the Labor Day weekend on September 7, 1998 in East Hampton, New York. Diddy reportedly invited 200 people to a barbecue at his new Hampton home. The guest list was fairly diverse, hip-hop and R&B artists taking up most of the space, along with some of the biggest actors on verse, hip-hop.
Okay, so there's no way Jay can say that he wasn't in there, right? Because he was, right?
And R&B artists taking up
the Kardashians, right?
most of the space, along with
I don't know who any of these are, so apologize.
some of the biggest actors on.
Leo was there. Who the fuck is this? I can't tell. Person next to him, I can't tell. So
Top of that, a young Leonardo DiCaprio who had just finished recording Titanic at the time was one of the guests. Everyone who was a somebody in the entertainment business was invited to the all-white party. These events helped the music mogul raise his profile in the industry, something he took great pride in.
They won't even give me a permit for the parties, man. They don't want me to throw the parties no more. But we ain't gonna stop. We gonna keep on having fun, bringing people together from all walks of life.
Oh! I'm a savage. Whatever I want, I'm going to get. Whatever I want, I have to get.
The parties boosted Diddy's public image and equipped him with enough connections to run these parties between 1998 and 2009 when the last one took place. The very much publicized all-white parties are, however, not to be confused with the so-called freak-offs. These after-hour activities were not so known by the public. It was the party.
Okay, so these were two different parties. It's still fishy though, like it's too fishy to know Diddy and not know the stuff that he was doing behind the scenes. I have trouble believing that.
Party after the party. Drugs and baby oil are at the top of the headlines in relation to these dark, SEX substance-infused get-togethers hosted by Diddy. These SEX-show encounters are described as coercive and abusive by the prosecution seeking legal action against Sean Combs and are the heart of the trafficking case he's been indicted for. The 14-page indictment heavily focuses on how the defendant, Sean Diddy Combs, abused, threatened, and coerced women and other people around him to fulfill his SEX-show desires. Diddy's freak-offs were allegedly fueled by a criminal enterprise who forced others into SEX trafficking, along with forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and obstruction of justice. With the help of his deep network of employees, resources, and influence he had built up throughout these last few decades as a music mogul and serial entrepreneur, Diddy put together what he called freak-offs, which were essentially SEX marathons that were not consensual. He allegedly lured his female victims by creating an orbit of women under the false pretense of a romantic relationship. Threats of violence and physical force were present, on top of coercion, all in the name of fulfilling his dark desires. The freak-offs were essentially an explicit show which sometimes lasted for multiple days, directed and hosted by Diddy himself.
Imagine that type of agony just going on for like a period of days, even hours, just days. This man was a monster, bro.
And it involved multiple people at a time, both men and women. As Diddy was pleasuring himself, unbeknownst to the alleged victims involved, he was also videotaping these moments and saving them as leverage against them. Another critical aspect of this is how Diddy, as a way to sedate and control his victims, allegedly used copious amounts of drugs to keep them in check, obedient, and compliant. After these freak-offs, the victims received IV fluids in order for them to recover from the physical extortion and drug use.
I think IVs can contain a lot of stuff, but you know the type of fucked up shit you have to be conducting inside of those little, like, I don't even know, those freak-offs to have IVs on the go to replenish. That has to be some of the most it has to be some of the most concerning shit ever, because the type of exhaustion you have to just be hooked up with an IV is crazy.
Forced upon him. The freak-offs were facilitated by Diddy's enterprise, which consisted of a team that included high-ranking supervisors, security staff, household staff, personal assistants, and other business employees of his. Their duties included booking hotel rooms for these freak-offs, stocking the rooms in advance with supplies for the sessions. Among the supplies were drugs, baby oil, lubricants, extra sets of linens, and lighting for the rooms where the freak-offs were about to take place. The people working for Diddy were also told to clean the hotel rooms after these freak-offs to try to mitigate any room damage. Arrangements for the victims' travels were also handled by his people, and so was the resupplying of any necessary items like the IV fluids, narcotics, and baby oil for the freak-offs.
Sean Diddy Combs and his production company, Bad Boy Films. Dozens of agents searched the property for hours, leaving with boxes of evidence.
Law enforcement seized a lot of these supplies in March 2024 during a search of Diddy's various residences in Los Angeles and Miami. Diddy had his people handle basically everything for him. Any payments that were made to the SEX workers involved were all done in cash, which was delivered in large sums all over the United States. All Diddy had to do was arrive and it was game time. The emotional, verbal, and physical abuse the alleged victims were subjected to is a big focus in his case. The indictment against Sean Combs states that he maintained control over his victims through not only physical violence, but promises of career opportunities, on top of threatening to withhold any financial support that they were receiving.
Like, it's so crazy how a lot of these Vince and Diddy have so much in common, because first of all, they coerce, right? They use their power. There's a power imbalance there, right? One of them is pretty much like a business mogul who was connected to Biggie and all of these people. He has the power, right? Like, all of the stuff that he runs, all of the companies that he runs, there's a power imbalance. So really, the coercion it's the same with Vince, because Vince is the owner, was the owner of WWE. So, like, if any new talent wanted to try anything, they wanted to become anything in his company, and they were female, they had to, like, they had to get Vince McMahon's approval, whichever way that approval was going to be gotten, right? There's so much, like, I'm not articulate enough to, like, explain, but there's so much parallel between these two guys' cases. So yeah.
By means of coercion. Those means included tracking their whereabouts, dictating how the victims dressed and appeared, monitoring their medical records, controlling their housing, and propping them up with substances to establish control and preserve dominance over them. During and separate from these freak-off sessions, Diddy, among other things, hit, kicked, threw objects, and dragged his victims by their hair. These assaults resulted in serious injuries that took days and sometimes weeks to heal. On top of this, any resistance to participate in the freak-offs led to the victims' careers and livelihoods getting threatened, which Diddy had full control over. The victims fully believed that they couldn't refuse any demands made by Diddy without risking their financial or job security, or without repercussions that came in the form of physical and emotional abuse. Diddy, on top of all this, used the freak-off recordings he had of the victims to keep them in his control and silence them. Members and associates of his alleged criminal enterprise, including his security personnel, at times carried firearms. On more than one occasion, Diddy himself flashed guns to intimidate and threaten his victims, including witnesses of any abuse. In March 2024, during the search of his residences, law enforcement recovered and seized multiple firearms along with ammunition, including 3 AR-15s with altered serial numbers, on top of drum mags. These are the firearms that are believed to have been used in the intimidation of the victims. The criminal network of people who enabled and aided him did so mainly through keeping tabs on the victims, by making sure they followed directions and protocol regarding financial payments, and by advancing or suppressing career opportunities based on their compliance level. The cover-up was made possible by everyone who worked under Diddy, and that was done through concealing the violence and abuse he had caused upon them. Diddy's alleged victims had all their movements tracked by his criminal enterprise in order to intimidate them and prevent them from leaving the freak-off locations. There were several instances where victims recalled being captured to remain in hiding for days at a time in order to ensure that they recovered from the injuries Diddy had inflicted upon them, so the physical violence could continue on in the dark. Anyone who attempted to flee was then contacted and located by his employees. Any of his employees who witnessed his abuse and questioned Diddy's authority or reputation were also assaulted to ensure their silence. These acts included physical violence, kidnapping, and arson. In late
Imagine that kind of existence has to just be beyond anything that I can even comprehend. Just having a dude lording over you. That if you wanted to disappear, if you wanted to, like, I don't want to do this anymore, you could, like, there's no option for that. They end up catching you and bringing you back, which is one of those things where the dude, if he doesn't get 50 years plus, I don't see what we're doing. Like, I the type of stuff he's done, 50 years, that's at least the amount of time I see him spending in jail.
Late 2023, following the public allegations of Diddy's crimes in regards to the statements that were made by his ex-girlfriend Cassie Ventura, as his reputation was threatened by negative publicity, the alleged victims and witnesses in his case were pressured to stay silent through means of bribery by Diddy's enterprise. They were told not to report what they knew or experienced to law enforcement and to provide false narratives of the events that took place if it came down to it. Diddy recorded these incriminating phone calls, and they were eventually retrieved by law enforcement in this case. The freak-offs are essentially described as a horror show that was elaborate and produced sex performances where anyone involved ran the risk of getting propped up with drugs on top of coerced using physical violence. These freak-offs left the alleged victims so exhausted they had to be given fluids just to recover. Diddy then used all the videos as leverage against anyone who participated and kept them silent and traumatized for years. The end for Diddy is near though, as he is incarcerated and as the government launched an extensive investigation into the life of Diddy with the intention to uncover the dark realities he put his victims through. Anyway, if you made it this far, drop a like since you enjoyed the video and subscribe if you're new here. Appreciate you for watching, and
Yeah, this is a good video of a fucked up dude. Like I said, if he doesn't get anything less than, if he doesn't get anything more than 50 years, I don't know what we're doing. Maybe I'm going to be like 100% sure that someone got tipped off, someone got like paid off in kind of the process of the decision, right? So other than that, I'll see you guys later. Peace.